Hey everyone, Chuck Hamilton once again with another video for the Warburg Classic Alliance Meet the Pilot series. And today we've got Mr. Ironman, and I call him Mr. Ironman because this guy flies non-stop multiple aircraft. But Matt Teresinski, thank you for joining us on this. And Matt, you're from what part of Wisconsin?
From Pewaukee, Wisconsin, southeastern Wisconsin.
All right. And Matt has campaigned various aircrafts at all the events. I don't know if there's any of them you've missed. I know I've missed a couple, and you're at all of these, and you fly non-stop, everything non-stop. But one of them you fly a lot of is your third scale Balsa USA D7. So give us a little history on why you chose this aircraft or this particular kit, and what was the motivation behind it that you built this?
Well, I got started back in 2002 after my son went off to college. He kind of went off in the spring after he graduated. And the next spring, I was bored and I was bike riding past the RC field. I got hooked just going there. The camaraderie of some of the individuals there was fabulous.
And it still is to this day.
Right. And then the next year, I went down to Lakeland, Top Gun.
Okay.
So my sister lived in Lakeland.
Oh, all right.
Outside of Lakeland. And for whatever reason, there was a D7 there, and I think it was Balsa USA, and it just caught my eye. Now, you know, up to that point, I was only flying a couple of planes, and I had really no interest in D7s. But eventually, that came back, you know, as a thing in the back of my head after I built my D47, and then it was like, you know, I really wanted the presence it had on the field.
Oh, absolutely. It
was cool.
Yeah, it is.
And so when I picked the kit and started building it, there was actually a friend in my club which also started flying the same spring that I started, and he had invited me to go look at another guy who had one of these in the bones. So we went down to tour this guy's basement. This had to be 2008.
This is really not that long ago.
Right, and so then I bought the kit, and I started building this in 2009. Like a 2-year build with this thing. Yeah. Just working on it in the winter. And I had heard rumors about the way it flies, and you know, you gotta use a lot of downtrim. And, you know, a couple things I changed about the way it's set up is, you know, on the plans they tell you can change the incidence of the lower wing. You know, they had kind of a range.
Yep.
In my mind, I thought, well, if I raise the trailing edge a little bit, kind of like right at the top edge of that range, that would kind of compensate for the
down trim on the elevator, right?
Right, and that turned out to be a good decision. I certainly hadn't built many planes at the time, but I don't fly with down trim. And the guy who started at the same time as me, he also started building a D7 at the same time, and he built the quarter scale.
Okay.
So he had his CG on his plans, and I had my CG on my plans, and I kind of scaled the difference. And his CG was like a half-inch further back or 3/4 inch than mine. And I kind of did a little investigation on the full scale. So when I built this plane, I wanted to put the CG, I think it was close to an inch behind where...
Further back
than Balsa USA.
Okay.
And I think the adjusted one based on the quarter scale was somewhere about 1/2 to 3/4, and I actually set it up at the furthest back, and then I chickened out at the last minute and I moved it up a little. So I think I ended up about 3/4 of an inch behind the recommended CG before.
Have you moved it since that first flight?
Yes, I have. I think when I first built it, I think I had about 3.5, 4 pounds of lead in it.
Yeah.
And currently today there's about less than a pound left.
Yeah.
And I kind of, I use the wheel weights and they're kind of slopped in the chin. And every time I take the engine out, I yank a couple more out.
You know, lately for me, especially the last couple of years, I'm pulling lead out of all my airplanes. Right. My CG's coming back on all of them, from my Spitfire, Wildcat, everything I'm in flying school farther back. And I know some of the designers, they do that on a forward CG to ensure the safety of the first flight, right? But obviously you're seasoned, you fly a ton. When we come to these events, you probably fly more than anybody. And so you've got a good handle on this thing. Let me ask you, why the finished color scheme?
particular reason other than, you know, I'm not into scale. I'm not a scale pilot. I don't, never really got in my head that I want to do scale.
You are. You don't know it, but you are.
It's just, I just like something different or something that I like.
Yeah.
And I wanted something different, and this plane caught my eye. And all of the pictures and all the literature only had black and white for this plane. And there was some stuff at a museum in Finland, because this is a Finnish plane. And they have a website, and I went there and I was able to get a couple pictures and a little dossier or whatever on the aircraft, but still no color. You know, one of the plastic bottlers had painted it with almost identical colors as to what you see on my plane, except for, I think the purple I have was dark green.
Okay.
So I went out and I got the little color swatches, and I mixed the paint and I sprayed it on some cardboard, and my wife was helping me with the colors, and I hated the dark green. I mean, it just looked blah. So I went back, and these were colors, these were lozenge colors from the Germans.
Correct.
And so I tweaked them, and I picked the purple. Otherwise, it's identical to paint scheme, and theoretically, there's no color photos of it anywhere.
Prove it.
So it's not wrong.
Right.
It's just an interpretation. And so the purple was my tweak on it.
Well, you made a comment that you're not a scale guy or a scale pilot, but you really are. Everything you're doing falls right there into that scale category, and you fly it extremely well. And you fly it in all conditions: the calm days, the windy days, and for our friends out there, Matt, that he has on his end struts, on the outboard end struts, those are Dawn Patrol ribbons.
Correct.
So at each one of these Warbird Classics events, we have a Dawn Patrol in the morning, typically on Saturday morning.
Right.
And for a reward, we get a ribbon, which is sponsored by Balsa USA. So it's kind of fitting that works. But now, I'm going to call you out on something here, and I'm sure there's a story behind it. There's a slight color change at the aft end, it's about the end of the scarf backwards, and then forward.
Well,
did something happen?
Well, something did happen, but the color change you see there is not a result of the something.
Okay.
The color change there is the result of the scarf rubbing up against the fuselage. So the scarf,
Awesome.
the scarf picks up the smoke coming off, because I do have smoke,
Yeah.
and I like to do the smoke, and that's actually what makes the color change. But I think it was around, I'm going to have to guess here, 2014, 2015. I went up to Rockford, which was September. It was probably this weekend in September.
Yeah. And is that the Rams?
I think it's called the Rams. It was the first time I had been there, and believe it or not, I fly this thing inverted sometimes.
I know you do.
And, you know, I can fly the scale doodad, you know, around the field, but I do like to push the envelope. And I was doing an inverted pass, and I decided that I was losing altitude, probably because I didn't have my throttle up all the way. Just at the time, my CG, I hadn't taken out all the nose weight that I have now. And so you had to keep it on full throttle to really maintain inverted flight. And I decided to pull out instead of roll it. And I was about 95% of that pull out.
That darn last 5%.
5%. And when it went in, this particular plane, all of the spars are square.
Yes.
I think 1 inch square.
Yep.
And all of the spar boxes are made out of light ply when you build the kit. Every spar box was busted except for the one in the center section of the top wing. And it wasn't busted, but it was pulled out about 4 inches on one side up to the top of the wing. And the fuse was broken half right behind the pilot.
Okay. So now, did you end up rebuilding or did you build new?
No, I took it down in the basement, you know, and I built it. And basically, I just opened the wings up to covering off the wings. I just put new spar boxes in all of the wings except for the center section on the top. That one I just relocate it where it needed to be. I probably replaced about 6 or 7 of the ribs just because I felt it was better to replace them. Piece them back together. Some were pieced, some weren't, and then I scarfed a little piece of 32nd inch aircraft ply to any joints that I scarfed.
Okay.
And then I And this plane, when I first built it, it uses like 3 strips of balsa to create the, I can't remember the name, the stringers that go to the back of the plane. On the
Right.
outside.
Yep. Top lounge runs.
Yeah. And all of those were somewhat scalloping due to the covering shrinking.
Yep.
And the fact that, I think it was 2010, we had the tent go down.
Yep. Fond du Lac.
At Fond du Lac, and my plane got full of water, and everything got wet, and that didn't help. So I took all of those, the long runs, or whatever they're called, and I cut them out completely and replaced them with, I used little stiffer balls.
Okay. What's she covered with?
It's covered with coverall.
Okay, I'm very familiar with that. So this is nitrate and doped and everything, right?
It's doped coverall, and that's how it's put on the frame. So I
Right.
dope the frame,
Yep.
like 3 coats, and then I
Yep.
dope the coverall. I generally use an iron when I'm putting covering on.
Yep.
One thing unique about it is when I first built it, all of the wing panels are covered in one piece of cover.
So you wrap them all around.
So I start at the leading edge,
Yep.
and then I do the bottom first, and then I flip it over and do the
Yep.
top, so there's no seams on the leading edges. And the fuse the first time was covered with one piece.
Okay.
That was really hard to do. I don't do it that way. I think the fuse is covered with 3 or 4.
Gotcha.
It's just a lot easier.
So you did like how many coats of nitrate on top of the cover all the first on the?
Probably 3 or 4.
Which was you shrunk it with a gun or your iron, right?
I had an iron and I had a gun. Typically, I'm tacking it with an
Right, with the
iron
iron.
to set it. You pull it around the edges, and then I use a gun just to tighten it up.
Okay.
I
Now,
ain't
did
go
you
crazy.
do butyrite on top of the nitrate?
No,
Okay.
this was painted with 2-part car automotive primer.
Okay. So
I used
that's you used to
2-part.
fill the weave with.
Right.
For the most part.
And actually, the first time I painted it, I probably did it very lightly.
Uh-huh.
And then, first time I painted it, also I used the company that makes the paint. But the paint I used when I put it on, I usually put it on and took 4 or 5 coats.
Yeah.
And usually I get it till the coats, I had 100% coverage, and then I would just put 1 more coat. So it was bare minimum. I think the second time I painted, I was a little more generous with paint. So she's probably a little heavier than it was the first time. But
Does the flying different?
No.
Did you
Pretty much
add,
the same.
because if you had a little bit more paint, but you did a lot of aft end work, right?
I recovered the fuse was completely recovered. The wings were completely recovered. The lower wing was replaced between the landing gear.
Gotcha.
And I put it on. I use a Vanessa rig to do the balance.
Yep.
The CG didn't change.
Really?
I couldn't perceive any change in the CG.
Oh, fantastic.
When I did that.
Well, Matt, this thing is awesome. I've seen you fly this thing a ton, in a ton of conditions, at a ton of events. You are our Ironman award winner of just flying, because you fly nonstop. But you're one of the guys that I wanted to talk to on this and showcase this airplane, because you're in a lot of Andy's videos. And I just wanted you guys put the face with the airplane.
Thank you.
So, but on behalf of Warbird Classic Alliance, myself, Andy Gideon, thank you, my friend, for being here with us here in Rosewood,
Andy.
Indiana. And I'm sure you can see it on Andy's video that he shows on this thing. Thanks again for joining us.
Thank you.
Thanks, guys.